I forget what it was called, but anyway, there was a Rudolph Witzig that got the
bragging about cool insurance.
Iron Cross from Hitler himself. And
had
Witzigs it was like really weird because I had never heard Witzig ever associated with anything
financial
Nazi. And we have a
next of
Rudolph
kin. What do I need that for?
I didn't.
That's for our older folks.
So I'm like,
so if they are not around, then
sure it's not the same one.
I have to sign my name here?
yeah.
Actually, flip it over if you would.
What's that for?
I think that's probably
That's
a
me?
fairly and not
That's
unusual
you.
name, and it would be a natural
What are you
progression
protecting
to have
yourself against in patent?
those names
yes,
spread
and
from
ownership rights.
the
We
Bern
used
area
this.
down into
We
Bavaria
used a form
and
from
into Austria.
Library of
So,
Congress, oral history.
Yeah.
you know, it's, I mean, there
Projects.
are millions of new houses that are, you know, to whom I'm genetically connected. that
Aw.
are-
If there's
Thank
lots
you.
of money
Long
being made on
distance,
this, I do have a
but
piece of it.
aren't really part of my family, and maybe we're never
Right.
Jewish.
Yeah.
All right.
Mike?
I'm gonna go ahead and shut the door here, and then we can get started. I invited Steve to join us because he is helping out with our history interviews and is doing a
everybody get
fantastic
water?
job.
Yeah,
So,
But I want to get Bud done, so if you can't do it, I'd be willing to do it.
I've talked to Bud. He's willing to bring his cohorts with him somewhere, wherever we want. Just need to tell him.
His cohorts.
This coffee group.
His coffee
Oh.
clutch.
Is this?
I don't want all of it,
Not gonna
but
bend
I
and
will take
fall
them
down.
if need be. The problem is, a lot of them aren't from here, and I want to hear what, you know, we want the Morton input, but if he wants to bring them along, that's fine.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, they hold him
I mean,
accountable.
Pardon?
They try to hold him accountable. He doesn't always
I'll
tell you.
hold him accountable.
He doesn't. He
Is he
inflates
t-
the balloon,
Should we also?
We
and
wouldn't-
no one's left to protect the truth. There's nobody left that can
He's
deny
pretty
it.
good.
Oh, I've caught him
He has a stinging
many,
sense of
many,
humor.
many times.
Should we include your mother-in-law?
She will not be able to do anything.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry she's not doing well.
No, she won't be able
What
to.
a charming woman, that's too bad.
Yeah, she's stable, but she wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, anyway, if you see how this goes, and if you want to do it, fine. If you don't have time, or if you don't want to do it, I'll happily do it.
Well, we might be able to do it together.
But it might work.
Yeah, he might feel better that way.
That'd be great.
Mm.
So to introduce, we talked a little bit about it before you guys got here, and you both know the project, but we are interviewing Morton residents about the people and places of Morton throughout history. We are capturing them on an interactive digital kind of walking map with the dream and hopes that we will have more kind of physical markers around town, similar to the town crier. And that's a long-term dream, but starting with digital versions and going from there. We were using a lot of the Roth research and work and incorporating that so it'll be kind of in this interactive format. Steve has very, very generously offered his time to help interview, and we've got different folks performing interviews to capture these stories. We have several good videos already. We have a list of people that we are also hoping to talk to as you guys are talking about. But one thing that comes up every time is Witzigs. Every interview, like one of the questions is, what do you miss? What was one of your favorite things about the history of Morton, and one of your favorite things? And it is always Witzigs. And I know that has been the case. Steve mentioned that was the case for him, and that's also the case for my family in the short time that we've lived here. And so just wanted to capture stories from there. So Steve has a list of interview questions that we can go through, but the context is we are excited to hear some of your memories and stories and things like that. So there's my intro.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Have you got the release forms?
I do.
Yeah, you will
Don't say a
have to sign
word
release.
until, don't say anything until we have that.
I didn't sign my right name. It's not my full name, so in case something goes wrong, I'm okay.
Bud's not the only guy with a sense of humor. So we need, for the record, the name, rank, and serial number stuff, as I call it. So your names as you would like them to be shown, full name or nicknames, however you want to do it. And then we will need from everybody birth date, age, and to get the addresses on the consent form, and then where you were born. So why don't we just start with you, Scott, and how do you want your name represented, and when were you born?
So I'm Scott Witzig, and you can just leave it at Scott Witzig without the middle initial if you want. And I was born August 31st of 1959 in Peoria. Lived here all my life. Never lived anywhere else in Morton, Illinois.
Do we need to put that all in there? He just asked for.
Can I just have my time?
Is
So,
And we used to work together.
if you
for
look at a map,
15 years.
I've lived literally within like a mile of every house I've ever lived in.
It's true.
That's really impressive.
okay. Name, rank, and serial
Mike
number?
Witzig was born September 30th, 1953. Not in Peoria.
In a
Where
hospital,
was
but not
it?
at
I was
home.
born in Duluth, Minnesota.
Minnesota.
And
But
how are
you-
you guys related to each other?
Cousin.
First cousin.
First
Our
cousin?
dads are brothers.
Okay, so 3 brothers?
No, 2 brothers.
2 brothers and 1 cousin.
Got it.
He's the outcast.
Got it.
I'm the Witzig nobody knows.
Yeah,
Got it.
I'm Phil Witzig, and born November 10th, 1962 in Peoria. So, also lived here all my life. I tell people I've never escaped.
Okay, let's go into a little bit about, because part of this is to capture sort of the old history. So we can kind of start with perspectives on the family, and at this point, I think we'll just, rather than trying to go 1, 2, 3, just let you each join in as you see fit. But talk a little bit about where the family came from originally and how you wound up in Morton, to the extent you know it.
Let's have you do that since you
Yeah.
visited overseas.
The family came from northwest Switzerland in a town called Witzigs, and the first family to come over was Casper Witzig, who landed in Peoria, and he was a tailor, and he actually had a shop on Southwest Adam Street in Peoria, and he made coats, as I understand, a tailor that made coats. And that ensued other Witzigs to follow, which landed in the central Illinois area largely because of the agriculture. A lot of them were farmers, but this particular Witzig from our group were tailors. And I think from there we had his son Theo, was the one that, I guess, separated from his father's business and moved to Morton and opened up the Witzig. It was the Theo Tailor Shop or the Witzig?
Theo Witzig.
Theo Witzig
Clothier.
on Main Street in 1910.
How did they pick Peoria?
They picked Peoria mainly because I think of not Peoria, but more of the Goodfield, Gridley area because of the agriculture and where they had been. And there were 3 brothers. There were Casper and 2 other ones, is my understanding. And we've actually researched the graves, and my dad and I found the grave of Casper and his wife in Peoria. We know of
At
Mary.
Springdale?
Yep, we found the gravesite. We found Theo, and obviously we know where that one is, and we actually found Mary, the other relative. So the main reason I think was agricultural similarities and the apostolic connection, because they were all apostolic
okay.
Christian church.
So they would have followed the path of there was
Yeah.
an apostolic, almost a trail that came across Ohio. We're finding
Yeah,
out.
it came from Pennsylvania,
Yes,
then Ohio.
Yeah, and it stops along the way, and somebody would say, "Well, this is a good place to go,
Right.
or that's a good place
I
to go."
think
So
that was the
you
draw.
think that's the chain?
Yeah.
And they came to Morton.
Yeah, my
Okay.
father researched that in Witzigs, and he went to the town hall, opened the town book with all the
Mhm.
registrations, and found the Witzig family in there, and know that they came here. They're registered there, the same family that he did the research here, along with your dad did a lot of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were very interested in that. So that's kind of the story how we started here in Central Illinois. Apostolic connection, agricultural, and then Casper, because Peoria was a larger area where he could do his tailoring.
How many were? Let me ask it another way. Were they primarily small business people tailoring and retail, or farmers, or pretty good mix of both?
I think they were tailors for our family. The rest were farming.
Yeah,
I'm not very familiar
Yeah,
with the
not
other,
either.
the Gridley area Witzig family, but yeah, they might have been farm people,
Yeah.
but
There were John and Casper and Casper's brother is the one that swindled him. That was that story. He was an alcoholic and caused the friction. So I don't know if they were all had any other experience, just tailoring. That's what they were. It said they lived on Taylor Street in Uvis, and they actually
Yeah,
lived on
there's-
Taylor Street.
They called it Schneiderstrasse.
Yeah.
The Schneiderstrasse was
Yeah.
street of the tailor.
Yeah, yes, how Swiss. They're
You
all
have a
pretty-
button that, right? You found that button? It was a little brass button that says
Casper Witzig,
Casper Witzig.
Master Tailor,
Wow. Uvies.
engraved in it, Uvisen,
Mhm.
Yeah,
on
little
a
button.
on a little button
Yeah.
that would have been like about the size of maybe a sleeve cuff button
Very small.
on a suit.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, how do how many suits could he make in a year for one guy, right? But somehow he was able to get custom brass buttons made. I thought that was kind of neat.
You know, it would be really cool if we could get a close-up photograph of that to go in the historical stuff.
Yeah, I have it on my phone. I could probably send
Okay,
it.
neat, good, yeah. You are the first ones, I think, that we talked to who were not almost exclusively farmers. You know, most of the stories of when they came here and they stopped, and Herb Roth pointed out, I think he was the second or third person to tell me, they stopped in Ohio. There was a place in Ohio where there was an enclave of people who had made this journey and stuff, said, okay, here in Kim Opperly's forebears, I think that's where he met his wife, and then they came here. Again, the farmland was the motivating factor. So the retail story is really
That's a unique, yeah.
interesting.
Probably. Right.
Okay. Well, none of you have left, except Mike, you were raised in Duluth.
Mhm.
So I guess we want to get a little bit of what you remember about Morton, or what you think of as old Morton. You go back before I got here.
So one of the things that I remember so much about when we were kids is that we'd wake up in the morning, run across the street to our friend's house, jump on a bike and pretty much leave for wherever we wanted for as long as we wanted with nobody asking where are you going or what are you doing, and we would just ride our bikes around town and explore and do whatever we wanted. My friend and I made gunpowder. One time we looked up a recipe for gunpowder on a chemistry set, but we were out of some of the ingredients. So we'd go down to Conabear Drug Store on the corner there of Main and Jefferson, go in the side door, go to the pharmacist and ask for saltpeter and I forget what else. Sulfur, and then we would crush up charcoal, and we could only make smoke.
Yeah.
We tried packing it into all kinds of toys and things, see if we could make it explode, and it never exploded, just like a little fizzle. But you think about the kinds of things that we did as kids. It was you were so free to just go out and explore and do things. Nobody worried about you getting lost or getting kidnapped or whatever. Nowadays you can't let kids do that.
What do you think gave your parents the confidence to let that happen?
Well, I just think, I don't know, I just think times were totally different. My mom had 6 kids, so and she was busy, you know. Dad was at work. I don't know. I just think they just kind of thought, well, that's how it is. You let the kids enjoy being outside, go play. And
It was much smaller. You know.
yeah, smaller
People
town.
knew everybody. Seemed like, I mean, you didn't, but it seemed like you did. It seemed like you knew most people, and that just wasn't. I mean, we could probably find a house of somebody we know. You know,
Yeah.
you're in trouble, you just knock on a door or something. Somebody
Yeah.
help you. You don't have
Probably.
to worry about things.
My reflection, even when didn't come till much later, but even then, when I bought my first house, you didn't buy a house on First Street. You bought the Carius house. You bought the Getz house.
Yeah.
That's the house that you bought. You guys had, your house was
Yeah.
the Witzig house, and so that's the way you did it. That was 1980. I bought the Carius house, which previous had been the Welk house, which before that had been, that's
Yeah.
how you.
We bought the Frank house.
The Frank
and
house.
then
I mean,
the Belsley
that's what they knew it
house,
as.
you know.
The Fritz Ruling house on 3rd Street. So that's how small the town still really was in 1980.
Your dad's house was on 3rd Street, right?
Second.
Well,
Second.
yeah,
Well,
Second Street where he lived, but where he grew up was on
Third
3rd
Street.
Street. And there's 2 houses on 3rd Street that his family
Right.
lived in. But yeah, Dad bought a house. It was the Howder house
Yeah.
on Second Street. And when I was in about 6th grade, we moved to 2nd Street, and then that's where Mom, Dad, Mom still lives there.
It's kind of unique. Maybe it's not unique, but I think the big tie also for the Witzig family and the store was the church, strong apostolic following, and a lot of the town was part of the apostolic church, and the values and the traditions that came along into our store for Gene and Harold and his dad before him had a lot to do with that Christian faith value that they learned and revered very early in life and translated to all of our business skills that we were taught from Gene and Harold. I think it was pretty important, and it wasn't just the Witzigs, it was the Rapps and the Getzes and all the other businesses in town. The Zobris had that ethic, that was pretty unique. I remember that all the time, coming down here visiting. That was pretty prominent. The church was a focal point for a lot of people's lives.
I remember when I got here, because my observation in 1980 is I'd been here 3 years, or almost 3 years, and that was very much the case. My kids being, getting involved with friends at school, becoming part of the kids community, talked in terms of family names, and that's sort of how I got to know who
Sure.
a lot of folks were, and
Mhm.
and the Witzig store. I worked at CAP. That was known.
Yeah.
That was Mecca for a lot of people. If you were going to shop, you went with high quality merchandise, personal attention. It was the Witzig reputation went way back, and I think it does tie us for brought the same question about what accounted for this. And I have always thought that it was just the set of values and the close community ties that the Mennonites and the Apostolics brought, and the kinds of people who collected around them, who maybe didn't belong to those faiths, but had similar views of how you behave and how you do things and what community standards should be. But what did your parents talk about? What do you remember your parents saying about their experiences, where they came from, family stories, things that would go back to the early days of Morton?
What do you think? Some of the stories of them
Oh.
growing up on 3rd Street. 3rd Street was like
A hotbed.
at the edge of town, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Barron's
Barron's
Court
was not
didn't
there.
exist, but the Barron's Farm was right there.
Right there.
So like, it was just farm fields beyond 3rd Street, which is not very far out from, town. It's just right in the middle of town. Now we call it the hood now.
Inner city.
The inner city.
3rd Street.
But 3rd Street is where their friends, their buddies, the rap boys, and I forget some of those names of those friends of theirs, and they would tell stories of, getting in little trouble with them. Just fun stuff, like tipping a outhouse over or something, or tipping cows, stuff like that.
They had lots of kids. I mean, everybody had lots of children. It seemed like there were 7 Rassies, 6 Witzigs, 10 Zobrists. I mean, everybody had lots. I mean, it was just part of the deal. And so there were a lot of, my dad recalls all the time, all the baseball games and the basketball games and the paper routes and, all that and the stories they had growing up with.
Lots of big family dinners.
Yeah, that's true too.
Big family dinners.
They kept their heritage. Remember, we would go even to our early marriage life. You'd go to Kennel Lake for the Sunday picnic.
Yep.
And on our side, we'd have to do the Witzig and the Dominic, because the maiden name of our grandmother was Dominic. So you go to the Witzig Kennel Lake meal, and then you'd have the Dominic, and then on my wife's side, we had the Zobrist and the Berkey, and it was always the same place and the same. You just changed people is all you did, but it was basically the same thing. But they kept things together as a family. I mean, they were really important about their families. I mean, the tie of the family was very strong, and all the families in town. That was not unusual to do that. But I just think the freedom they had growing up was until the war. That changed a lot of things.
You're thinking World War II.
World War II.
Do you remember them talking about how, was it Grandpa Witzig Elmer during the Depression? Did he sell honey?
Yeah.
To try to make ends meet? I've even seen a label that has Elmer Witzig.
That was his hobby too.
Honey.
I think that was his hobby.
And so I don't know if he or the kids would pull a wagon around and try to sell honey. I remember stories too about how Grandma Witzig would always bring in the hobos that would come off the trains, They needed a meal. So they kind of knew houses that were friendly to them, and Grandma and Grandpa Witzig's house was a friendly place, and they could stop there and get a meal.
The hobos marked.
Yeah.
From my understanding, they mark your house. They put
Okay.
She'd make them do a little bit.
Some kind of a mark on your property that you wouldn't notice. And when a hobo came by, they knew, so that they knew that they would get a friendly reception. That's interesting. And a lot of people did that during the Depression because they knew there were a lot of people on the roads and needed a handout.
Yeah.
I remember just my dad always talking about how long and hard his dad worked at the store. It was not 9 to 5. It was, 6 days a week, open the store at midnight if someone needed something. I mean, always he would talk about how hard they worked and long hours they worked, and Sunday was just great for them because that was the day off, and church was most of the day anyway, but they did have long hours, and it's like that's what they did.
Well, I remember the work. Long hours, you put a lot of effort into the store.
Yeah.
And your dad, Scott, you told me, was trained as a watchmaker originally.
Yeah. Yeah, he went to the school at, was it Bradley, I think?
Bradley, yes, was a horological institute.
Yeah. So he got certified as a watchmaker, which I have a great picture. I need to send you that. It's so cool with him, working on a watch. But even after, so he was scheduled. He was working for his uncle John Frintz
Prince's Jewelry.
Prince's Jewelry
Right
Store.
on Main Street.
Right on Main Street. And he was planning to sort of work his way into that business when his Uncle John retired or whatever. So then when Dad got drafted into the Army, apparently while he was away, his Uncle John passed away. And John's wife, Olga Prince, she couldn't afford to keep the shop open, and so she had to sell it. And so that meant that when Dad came home, he wasn't going to be going into that business. So I guess when he got back from the Army, it was around Christmas time, and the store was going to be busy, and they said, why don't you work here for a while at least? And he ended up just staying then. Stayed in the business with Gene. So that was it. But even after when we were growing up as kids, people would bring watches and cuckoo clocks and other kinds of clocks to our house. We lived in Dietrich Court at the time, and Dad would work in the evenings on watches and clocks, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, because he had the most unique little tools, and he had that eyepiece that,
Yes, loop, yeah.
you know, would I just thought he could look at stuff really tiny and work on that, and I thought it was amazing that he could do that.
When did your dad go in the Army?
It was
I
the
don't
Korean
know.
conflict, so
Or
in
during
the
the Korean
early
War?
50s.
He went to Fort Sam Houston for basic, and then to Panama.
Mhm.
Do you know what he did in the Army?
He was a dental technician.
Okay, so that's why Fort Sam, yeah, medical center.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So he made false teeth. He brought back from the Army, you know, some molds and some little teeth parts. I remember thinking that was kind of fun
Partials
to look
and
at too.
whatnot. Yeah.
Do you remember him talking about his service in Panama?
A little bit.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I remember mostly just seeing pictures of it. Like he had a box of photos. And I remember looking through that, but I don't know if I remember a lot of stories. Do you? You know some?
Yeah, not a lot. He was a good friend with
Lloyd Shoemaker.
Lloyd Shoemaker, who
Ben Frank.
was in the
No.
served in Panama with him.
Oh, why not?
And
No,
Lloyd
it's
was
Jeff Shoemaker.
also an apostolic and from a different town, but they were both transferred to Panama, and so he tells stories of them doing things, and he did say that it was not difficult service. He says that what did he call it, the resort of the
Pacifist.
the resort of the something, Caribbean or something. It was a pretty nice place, and it was not. I mean, the other guys were in Korea on the fighting, but he was stationed in Panama.
My sense is that was kind of an exotic experience for a lot of Mortonites, because they went, a lot of people that like you lived in a mile of every house you've ever lived in. Here were people that suddenly were off to Korea or Panama or wherever. And Ken Opperly's book was very enlightening about that. A bunch of guys who wound up together in the military and had all these common values and experiences, knew each other. And of course, Ken's got some real stories in there, but it must have been for boys that grew up, never really went very far away, and suddenly to find themselves in the Army or the Air Force or whatever, and in a foreign location must have been maybe even a jolting experience, but certainly something outside of their youth that would have maybe changed the perspective or created something that they would have brought back to Morton.
Yeah.
You said, Mike, that there was something before the war, that there was freedom before the war, and then that it kind of changed after
Well, I
the
think
war?
just like you're saying, when men came back from their service, the horizons were different.
Mhm.
Especially for my father. My father probably leaving as a just graduating from high school. He went in 1944, I think, and he was in the Navy. And what he saw in his experience was the world, all the way to Guadalcanal to wherever. So when he came back, much like you said, the horizons changed differently. And when he came back, I think the store was not as much of a drawing card for him as was geography. And so he went to Bradley and majored in geography and got a PhD in geography, and that's why he ended up in Minnesota teaching geography at the University of Minnesota. So I think that's what I mean. Everybody came back a little different, in their perspective, and that's how it kind of changed, I think. And people started to realize that, instead of everybody being born and raised and staying, that was starting to be a little different post the war. They were being born and raised and leaving. Not all of them, but more than maybe in the past.
Well, their oldest brother, Bill,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
same thing. He was in the Navy in World War II and got out. And he had been stationed in, or had spent time in California and really liked California, so he decided to live in California. We always, as growing up, we called them the California Witzigs. That was the dad's oldest, our cousins from California. But that was a perfect example of another one of the brothers.
How do you think those experiences changed Morton? The people came back from World War II and from Korea.
I don't know. I would think it instilled their values even stronger, of what perhaps they saw that was discomforting or unfair or unjust, and they came back here and said what they learned here was really, really more important than they thought. The values and the fairness and integrity and how to do things. Maybe I think that might have been, the opposite of what we would have thought. They looked inside more than they did on the outside.
When do you think Morton started to really change? My sense is, and some of this goes back to this interview I did with a Caterpillar vice president, or a group vice president, George Armstrong, who lived in Morton for many years in the 30s. This picture of Morton being pretty stable through the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe into the 60s. At some point, this little nucleus of old Morton families began to be augmented by people who moved in from elsewhere, and then later newcomers like me really began to change. But at what point do you think that things sort of began to shift and it started to move away from being that little farm town and turning into what it is now?
I think Caterpillar.
Yeah, got a lot to do.
I don't know. I'm not very good at Caterpillar history, but you would know that. But the building of the cat plant in Morton, I think, really had a big effect on Morton and just
that
the
was
growth of that whole.
preceded by the Interstate 74, right?
Mhm.
Coming
I
by,
think-
Yes.
which really made it possible for Caterpillar
Mhm.
to say this is a good
I
spot.
would say as
for
Caterpillar, I truly do think Caterpillar was a huge effect, and I'm no, I'm no historian, but I would sense that the burgeoning center of Peoria being this world headquarters of this a company that became multinational, and then Morton started looking like a pretty nice little bedroom community for executives that would be working in Peoria at CAT. I really think that's when Morton began to change a lot. The 74 had a huge effect. improvements of that, and it became a very convenient place. It's not very far from Peoria. It's a nice town.
Were you guys working in the shop at that point? Like, kind of tie it maybe
You
a little
guys
bit to
were
the
since
shop
you
if we could.
Yeah.
Little. You guys were.
Yeah, we were. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. We probably. What did you say? Junior high.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe junior high.
Junior high, you started kind of doing stuff.
At the store.
Yeah, so I remember Dad saying, "You want to come in on Saturday? I can put you to work dusting shoe boxes." Well, we never dusted shoe boxes later on. I don't know if it was because doors were open more or what it was, but he put me down in the
So you actually did
basement
that?
stock room. Yeah. You pull a box off the shelf, take your rag and wipe off the top and shove it back in. The top box of each shelf, was gonna have a coating
that's-
of dust on it.
That's funny because literally I've heard that term, dusting shoe boxes, as a job that the young kids in the family would do. And I'm speaking of
You thought it was
the older generation.
Yeah.
But
You never did it.
I never did do
You never
that.
did
I
it?
just heard of it. And so that's really interesting that you actually did that.
Yeah, I'm old. Well, so I don't know. Dad would give me a quarter or something for dusting shoe boxes, and you could buy a lot for a quarter down at the Ben Franklin. Penny candy, three tiers of semicircle just filled with
Ben
penny
Franklin
candy. You could fill a big
was a
bag
very
full of
important store
candy.
for kids because they had the candy.
Yeah.
That was still here when I moved here.
Yeah,
And when I moved
Yeah.
here in '77, you were pretty young guys working
yeah.
in the store.
Yeah.
And I was only 33, and you
Mhm.
were.
You can imagine me not living here, coming here to visit growing up, and these were my cousins that I'd only see once or twice a year, if even that, and to come and stay and then go down to the store. It was like, well, this is with your name on it. It was like a whole new world for me. But so a lot of times we ended up doing that, but we also we could go over to the Carius A&W
Yes.
and wash root beer bottles, right, and then get a free burger from Uncle
You mean
Gal.
bottles or
We'd
the
have to
mugs?
rinse out the mugs. That's what it was.
Yeah,
the
they
main
had
mugs.
that-
So they
had
always
that.
had a way to work little jobs for the guys visiting and get something out of it, like a hot dog or something.
Uncle Al Carius would.
He was family.
The root beer stand had all these little sayings handwritten on pieces of cardboard, just pinned up all around the inside wall, around the outside, and you could just sit there while you're waiting for your food and read all these, neat
Sayings.
old sayings that he would
And that
have
was
written
that
down.
was family. See, family was across the street. It was and everybody had family all over the place. It seemed like.
So the
Well-
Carius family's related through Grandma Witzig.
Witzig, yeah.
She was a Dominic, and her sister married a Carius. So that's how
Carius.
we're related to the Cariuses.
Well, one of my greatest memories coming here, or discoveries, I guess I should say, as I came here, was that everybody in this town was related to somebody else in this town except me. And if you went to a Witzig
Imagine.
or a Yordi or whomever and started asking, the next thing you know, you were into a Grimm or a Schwarzentraub or a
Yeah, well, you didn't marry. You married by the maiden name. That's always the joke in our family. Oh, she married a Booker. You just go by the married name. Nobody. Oh, okay. Well, then it's okay. But it was pretty. I think that was small town Midwest. I don't really know if that was unique just to Morton, but it was. We reflected the greater part of the Midwest at that time. I think if you went to Lincoln, you'd probably see the same thing. I don't know.
So back to the Witzigs' little jobs. I
Yeah.
mean, we used to paint down at the store. My dad put us to work painting. I mean, he'd always say to me, "You can write your own ticket." That was his phrase for you can make as much money as you want to. I've got plenty of work. You just work all the hours you want. And so as we got a little bit older, like in high school, my cousin Tim, Gene's son, and I don't know, you were younger.
I was a little younger.
Not you. Okay, so Tim and I, and maybe some other young employee that would work, we would see how many hours we could work in 1 week. So we would paint all night long till morning. Because you had to paint when people aren't there. So you paint all through the night. The paint would hopefully be dry enough by morning. Dad could pull all the tape off and people could start shopping. We'd go home and sleep for a few hours, come right back and do stock work or, whatever needs to be done. And by the time the store closes, we'd get out the paint again and start painting again. You'd have to take all the racks off, all the clothes, move them, take the racks down, paint those walls, put the racks back up. And we would try to work 70, 80, however many hours. It was like a goal. Let's see how many we can, punch in on. But that was kind of neat to have a job. You didn't have to go find a job. You had a job. And that was different than a lot of kids. They're like, well, you're lucky. You can go work whenever you want. I don't have a job I can go to. So that was kind of a treat.
Who were some of the prominent personalities in the town when you were growing up? People that kind of stand out as leaders or characters or...
Oh man, there's
People
some
made a
real
difference.
characters. I remember in the summer we'd have sidewalk days, and those were hard days.
I remember those.
You'd have to haul all the clothes out to the sidewalk. Basically, the store was about empty inside, it seemed like, and all the clothes that you marked down are now outside, and you had to take them out in the morning, put them back in the evening. But on the last day of sidewalk days was Clarence Yorty would show up with his
Clarence.
Cadillac. And he'd pull up and he'd just stand back and load up those, put them in the car, he'd just have them just start loading up stuff. Yep, I'll take those too. Write that down, whatever it is, and then he'd write one big check and take those clothes to some charity. And I don't remember who he would take them to, but that was his sort of philanthropy, was go buy all these clothes. They're really quality clothes, but they're all marked down, and he would take them to some place in Peoria, I guess, and give them away. But that always left an impression. Here's this guy. He must be really wealthy. He's driving a Cadillac. He can write a big check. And he just keeps saying, yeah, load it up. I'll take all those. I'll take all of that, And it helped us, and it helped other people.
Yeah.
Was he the senior Yorty at the time?
Would that be Jim's dad?
Yeah.
I think it was Jim's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Yorty family.
He would have been like Grandpa's generation, right? Maybe younger, but about that generation.
Who were some of the other community leaders at the time?
Well, I remember the police chief. I don't know.
Joe Stevens?
Joe Stevens.
Oh, had
He's.
lots.
I don't know. He was kind of a. I remember. I don't know. This is a leader necessarily, but there was Larry Smith was kind
The
of
detective
The policeman.
kind of the policeman that.
kept track of you guys.
I don't know. He was just kind of from a different mold. He was like.
He's kind of a character.
Yeah,
He
a little bit of a.
kind of helped.
He kind of
Kids
both
are
was
proud, but
liked
also-
by kids, and at the same time he didn't.
Somebody used to say, if believe me, Larry Smith has a photo of you at a place that you don't want to be known that you were at. So don't get in trouble, or he'll whip out the photos and he'll say, "You want this to get out?" So, I mean, that was like high school, you know.
Sure.
But a lot of kids used to say, "Look out! Here comes Larry,
Yeah, they called him Leapy, didn't they?
Leaping Larry."
Leaping Larry.
I just know that my dad and talks a lot about my father-in-law, Bud Zobrist, was on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
on a lot of things. Raps, Roths were leaders.
Opera
Operas, they were all on. They were on boards and school boards, and did their civic duty. And I do remember vividly, they had a person get on the village board who was just not from here, and tried to do some things that were really counter to the norm. And I just remember that caused a lot of problems, for the village, and some good, some bad, but it was,
Well, certainly Mayor
difficult.
Hertzstein
Yeah, the mayor.
was a
Yes.
Chalmer Arnett.
big
Chalmer Arnett.
Yeah.
Before that, he was
Yep.
Fritz
Ruling.
Ruling
Ruling.
at the bank.
Quietly, Vern Rinkenberger, in his own quiet way. He was.
Yeah.
My sense was, and you and I talked about this, Mike,
Mhm.
and I think Scott, you and I as well. When I got involved in politics and I got appointed mayor, Hertenstein actually
Yeah.
the one that put me on the plan commission. But I did a little searching and Googling, and got a little interested in Morton history, and in this observation that Morton, for as far back as anybody knows, has had exemplary leadership, selfless people.
Mhm.
Whatever their personal axes were that they could grind, they didn't. They acted in the interest of the community, and seemed to be consistent over, in my observation, maybe 100 years or more. And that's exceptional. What do you think accounts for that? But do you share that view? And then
I think it goes back to the value system they learned as a young person before they're even 9 or 10 years old. We always know, in my business, we know that most people get the value of their money before they're even out of the 6th grade, and I think that had a lot to do with how they conduct themselves. It was the integrity that they had from their parents, that they taught them honesty,
Mm-hmm.
and sure, we kids did did things now and then, but the core of our parents, all of our dad, the core was just, do it right. It's got to be right.
Integrity.
Yeah, it was,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was through the whole. They all socialized together, whether it was at church or at dinners or with family, and so it was consistent. It wasn't narrow, it was broad, and it was consistent amongst most of the people that grew up in this town. I think that's what creates that long history of that kind of leadership.
Well, that was my sense for generations back, and I remember querying people early on about what do you remember? Did these kinds of things happen? And there were 1 or 2 instances that people commented on where somebody was a trustee or had some job in it, and again, it wasn't so much that they were doing something illegal or criminal, as it was an argument about how they were going about getting the job done or something. But there were only 1 or 2 instances. Generally, it was collegial, committed to the community, and almost without fail, in my observation, benefited the community. And I think that's just extraordinary. So to me, one of the things always characterized Morton, and I've been in a lot of places, and you just don't find this. I've always attributed it to the values that these settlers brought, partly the religious values that they brought, the farm values, but people who didn't belong, that didn't have the same faiths or the same, the people that came here that were not part of that migration, is still people that came and said, these are the values that I identify with. And I can't think of an instance where
Oh, yeah,
anybody.
we'd see it at the store all the time, what your dad would do or Gene would do. We'd be like, really? That's what, the reaction was, wow, that was very impressive on us.
Do you have an example?
Oh, I can
Something
think
that
of
comes
one.
to
Since
mind?
I was with Gene on The Office more than I was with Harold, but I'd see Harold just cave right into it.
Somebody would have a complaint. He'd say,
and
our only policy, or only firm policy is flexibility. So like the employee would say, you're gonna have, like customer would come and complain to one of our associates, and they would say, well, I can't give you your money back. And they go, I'm gonna go talk to Harold or Gene,
And
then they would cave in.
Why would I
And-
don't think we'd call it. We
Well,
call it caving
we called
in.
it cave in, but they would say there's only one firm policy, and that is flexibility. Once they take that next step, we're probably gonna give it in, but that takes it off of you. Like, you didn't have to give in on the policy. We gave it in for you, and so you can feel good about that. You held up to what you were told is the policy, and then we gave up. We gave it in.
And it preserved the customer probably at the
Yeah, and the
expense of
customer was
Their last
happy
experience
and-
is the most important experience. How many times did I hear
Yeah.
Gene say that? And I know on Gene, we had a very a Caterpillar management person get caught shoplifting, and Gene had a shoplifting process.
Mhm.
Now, you guys remember, he
Yeah.
has a 5-point plan that he would say, if you follow with me, these 5 points, we will not turn you in or stay.
Prosecute.
We'll stay right within it. It was a 5-point plan that he would go through, and it was admit to the guilt. Gene would read a Bible verse to him.
bring your family in, and we'll talk about it. So they
Yep.
are aware that we know.
And whatever else you stole from anywhere else, we want you to go let them know. And then I remember that particular gentleman came back, oh man.
You have to get some counseling
Get
from
counseling.
either a pastor or a
Yeah,
professional
You
counselor.
guys we all knew that. And
So
this-
it was like a
it's
process.
amazing.
He tried to help,
Yeah.
not just say you shouldn't have stolen from us and we're going to prosecute. He wanted to help them learn something and
That gentleman came back years
Rehabilitate.
later. Had rehabilitated. Was so gracious, thankful for what Gene done, because he never did lose his job, or nobody really knew it. It was.
He would
and he was
keep
very,
it
very
confidential.
Yeah, he was very
Yeah.
thankful for that opportunity. That's the kind of thing you'd learn working with Gene and Harold. And I'm sure if we had the chance to work with their father, Elmer, which I didn't, but maybe you did, but same kinds of values would be taught there, because that's where they got them. It was pretty important to all of us in all our own businesses that we do now. That's still in. I'll still never forget that.
I constantly,
Yeah.
somebody will say, where'd you learn to do that? My uncle drilled that into me,
Yeah.
back when, that's how you do this. Like, be frugal.
Yeah.
Like, reuse the backside of the paper that's printed on one side, cut it up into squares, and use that for notes.
Oh,
And
I do that.
we used to joke, we had to write something, a bigger sign. We tape a bunch of those little pieces together to show that we're being frugal.
Yeah.
The retail clothing business, contrary to what a lot of our peers, especially when we were younger, was not an extremely lucrative business. It was a reasonable business. Looking back, we didn't think we were poor or anything like that, but
Margins were so low.
Dad raised 6 kids, but we didn't have tons of money. And
But everybody thought we were rich.
But everybody
'Cause
thought we were rich
yeah.
because we had this.
The kids at school.
The kids
would
at
be like,
school
"You're
was
rich. Your dad owns that.
Your dad
big
is rich.
business."
I just remember that. Your dad is rich.
I got so sick of that.
Yeah.
You're
Man.
rich. We're like, I'm
I'm
not
like,
rich.
come look at our house. We lived on Dietrich Court in this cracker box
6 kids.
Cape Cod house. It was 6 kids.
3 boys in the upstairs
Three-
bedroom, 3 girls in the main floor bedroom, and mom, dad.
Yeah, we
in another,
didn't-
You know,
we
it
didn't
wasn't
live
like we
real
didn't have
high.
some big mansion.
Yeah, we had nice clothes because we got them cheap.
Yeah.
Dad did see to that we were dressed well, but yeah, we didn't have boats, we didn't have cabins, we didn't have fancy vacations. If we went on a vacation, we
Camper.
camped somewhere.
We borrowed a pop-up tent camper.
Yeah, we borrowed or rented or paid somebody.
Yep.
But,
The other thing.
but anyway, the where I was going with that is that this. Yeah, but the frugality of which you speak was necessary. I mean, that's what, I mean, they really had to watch, especially in the 80s when the recession hit
Yeah,
and
that was
it
bad.
just started, our business started.
We never recovered from the
I
cat
remember
strike.
that.
We never recovered.
It was a slow strangle.
I was crushed
Yeah.
at that happening to, in
But-
past Witzigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember every expense was second guessed.
You know the nature of retailing. The men buy your goods 8-9 months in advance of the. You would buy your
We have
goods
to order the inventory
Yeah.
way far in advance.
7-8
of the season.
months, and the women were 4 to 5 months. And so, when the cat strike came in the 80s, all that merchandise had been committed, and it was on its way.
Mhm.
And the strike started in the spring, and it'll just be by August, by summer, then fall. No, it went all the way through Christmas,
I
all the way
remember it well.
to the next year. So we had 12 months of inventory scheduled. You couldn't really stop it. And I remember going to the bank with Gene. We had to negotiate loan after loan after loan to get through all those. And then when it was all done, we had to take all those and consolidate into one massive loan. And the day that I left in '91, we still had that debt. And we never got through that. We got out of it, and eventually we got everything.
Do you
paid
remember
off.
some of the interest rates of that?
Well,
I think it
all
was
of
up as high as 17%.
17 in the 80s, 13.
17%.
That's how devastating
Fatal.
one event can have and at the same time, the era of family-owned
Yeah.
retailing, clothing stores was starting to be dying because of the competition in other places. And you took those two together.
Huh?
And,
Witzigs,
yeah,
Grimm's,
yeah.
Benjamin Franklin. Ben
Well, we
Franklin.
can tell you countless of others
Yeah.
that we all were part of.
Miller Bakery.
Just changed, you know. But that one event is one that I remember never really recovered.
But
Because
the store in its heyday was, I mean, you look back at the kind of store that was, the kind of traffic that it
Mhm.
brought to the downtown. I mean,
Well,
it
people
was
came from miles
big.
around.
oh yeah,
It was big.
yeah.
I remember promoting Levi jeans during back to school and in one weekend selling over 500 pairs of jeans. Now that's a lot of pairs of jeans, but that's back when people used to come in and say, my 2 kids here each need 6 pairs of jeans for school. And we had a huge wall of bins of blue jeans on the main floor. But instead of grabbing the 6 pairs from that shelf, which we had plenty there, we'd run upstairs so we didn't deplete the stock. We'd run upstairs and there's still plenty of them up in the back stock to grab 6 pairs for each of those kids and bring them downstairs. So when you're selling 6 at a time, or 5 or 3, I mean, we sold tons of product, and then, I don't know, Moonlight Madness was a big sale
Mhm.
that we'd have, and people would come in and buy suits, and we'd sell 150 suits on a weekend or something, and we had so many suits that needed tailoring that we'd sometimes have to drive a load of them up to Chicago, to a tailoring shop up in Chicago, and have them tailor, and then we go bring them back home. That's how many suits you would sell. So it was really a thriving business at one time. Kind of neat to think back at how much
It was a
business
very
it really
integral
was.
part of the community, like, from employment purposes to,
Well, everybody
You know,
respected it.
you know, it was-
You couldn't find anybody that didn't
you know,
admire and shop it.
parking was always a mess.
One of you sold me, I guess towards the end, towards the time when the store was closed, the last pair of shoes I bought, they're Johnson & Murphy.
That was me.
That was you. I thought, and we had a discussion
department.
about shoes and about my
Uh-huh.
friend that had the shoe store down in the south end.
Okay.
Remember that?
Yeah. uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was shortly, I think, that I was crushed when that
Yeah.
came to an end.
Mhm.
but probably just hundreds and hundreds of people were employed at various times at the store, and even after the store closed, there were groups of those employees that would still meet together. I think there's still
There's still a
a
group,
group
of
of ladies that
meet.
still get together who used to work at Witzigs back
Yeah.
in the day, and sure, there's probably some that there wasn't a good fit or whatever, but for the most part, you almost always heard that they loved working at Witzigs. They thought Dad and Uncle Gene were some of the most some of the best people to work for, and they were treated well, and that's a neat heritage to have. And we've all taken that, like Mike said, into the work that we've done since. Is you always have that voice in the back of your head kind of saying, you just remember their voices telling how to do things.
It was a
you know.
culture. The strategy of the Witzig store was the culture, more than anything else.
Is there anything else that you can think of about your time growing up and sort of coming up to the current time in Morton that you think has had a significant effect we haven't talked about on Morton, or things that you're concerned about, or things that have changed
There's
Morton?
so many stories you could tell.
Yeah. I mean, when the store closed, of course, everybody, what's going to happen? And as time evolved, that's turned out okay. I mean, it's been some very innovative things that have happened downtown. So it wasn't the end of the world, the town did rebound quite well and moved on, So that's interesting to see, where sometimes when that happens, the town just dries right up. But it didn't happen, and that's attributed to leadership, not going to let that happen, and trying to move forward. But that's just life. The town responded. I don't know.
Okay.
I would be curious, like a takeaway, something about Witzigs that you'd like kind of commemorated, or just one of your favorite anecdotes about your time there, or things that you think can last, and then also inform future. Part of this is we're looking to the future and would like to see the town continue to grow. So kind of some transition and introduction to dreams, visions, thoughts for the future of Morton.
Well, I'll start. I mean, what I learned from the value of the store was how important the downtown is, and always should be in a town of our size. And so the downtown was really vital when Witzigs was there. Everybody, could gain if you were in the downtown and they had a successful operation like that, traffic was good. You had other stores nearby that benefited from the traffic, and you had, food, restaurants, all kinds of things all benefited from that. So what I would take away is, going forward, we need to keep the downtown and keep growing the downtown. It's still really, really important to have, in a town like us, to have that central location, to have all that activity and research. So that's what I'd like, hopefully, that we can go forward with, keep moving along, and how important the downtown really is.
Maybe I would just say that, running a business or working with integrity and character has so much impact on a community, and on not only on your business but on the community. I mean, I think that's one thing that I was proud to be able to hear people make those comments about my dad and Gene, having the integrity that they had in running a business like that. So that's something that, even though the business didn't last, that lasted.
Yes. And I think that's a characterization of Morton. That's one of the reasons that I think people have so much respect for Morton. Talk to people and, oh, Morton, you do it right. We heard that a lot. Phil?
Oh my. Trying to come up with a favorite memory, and
Oh, I got tons from
they're just
Phil introduced higher quality than maybe Gene and Harold were willing to think we really needed.
Really?
The Johnston Murphy shoe.
Yeah.
And challenged them, but in the end, right. Don't you think, Phil?
yeah. Well, we
Don't you?
were. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they were doubting what Phil was buying, but
It's like,
are you really? No one's going to buy that.
We
Where I
did
bought 'em.
too.
That's where I
Boston
bought 'em.
Traders and
Boston Trader. Well,
and all.
we were the first to
But we-
own Nautica.
Yeah.
But that'd be one thing. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of fond memories of just my time working with people like yourself, and I think through the years, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I just always loved working with your dad," or whatever, and then eventually, people would get to know me or something, and I learned so much about my ability to interact with others today is so fundamentally influenced by having to work with customers.
We lost it.
I see sometimes young people today that really don't know how to talk to people. Especially the email and the Facebook and all these electronic media and texting, and I'll try to call up somebody and they won't answer, man. You can't hardly, they'll text you back. I'm like, can't I just call you? But, there's like a very much of a discomfort of how to, but that's something that we learned from pretty young. That was a very big thing to me. It's a big part of who I am today, is just learning how to interact and work and talk to people. And that's, I don't know, I enjoyed working with people, and that was great learning ground for me.
The Witzig name today and hopefully in the past, really meant something. How many times would you hear Gene or Harold or my dad even say, remember, you're a Witzig? And that means something. It's not your first name, it's your last name. And I'd have to say my business that I'm in now, the reason I was successful was because of the Witzig name and what it meant in this community. And they said, well, he's a Witzig, at least there's something set in motion already.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much that he was bragging.
No.
It was more of a sense of remember what
Your
you're trying to.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Remember your responsibility.
Yeah, Gene Witzig used to.
Exactly.
His son Tim was kind of a hothead playing sports, so he'd play tennis, and when he was playing, he'd throw his racket or something, and Uncle Gene would sit on the sidelines and he'd hold up his fingers like this. That's the W. Remember,
You're a Witzig.
that was his way of saying to his son out there, remember your last name.
It meant so many things.
Just sort of like, don't act like that. That's
Yeah.
not a good thing.
So I think that was crucial to the community and how we were brought up and how we were taught. So
Certainly the way I perceived your family and everybody I knew perceived your family. Again, I'm speaking as a newcomer, arriving here in '77, and encountering the Morton culture.
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
You bet.
I'm sure there are many others,
Oh.
and I will happily write them down or record them at another time.
We should just have a session of stories from work,
Yeah.
or things that happened revolved around our work at the
We-
store.
we-
We've got
Remember
some
the annual
stories.
dinner, annual Witzig dinner, that we would do the entertainment? Oh,
Yeah.
God.
One of the problems
We
with
could
these
do it.
things is that there is so much
Yeah.
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 to cover.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
while I find it intensely interesting, at some point this is going to be looked at by
Yeah, and they're
people
not
in
gonna-
generations, and you
yeah.
think, how do you distill this
Yeah.
Yeah.
and put it? So I think we're making great progress. Again, I
Edits.
think the way the project is developed is just super. Much more comprehensive than I had ever thought when I was just mad because people were going, if you're going to talk about your history, get it right.
Yeah.
And so I think this worked out very well, but there's going to be a lot of stuff.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We can
We got to
segment it.
get Bud, and we got to get your Aunt Shirley.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was a love story that started at the store.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Shirley
Shirley.
and Ed Howler. Yeah.
That's a romance. Scott was a romance.
In the store.
Yeah, that's another aspect. How many people
marriages
got
came
married
out of that?
after meeting?
Mike
At Witzigs.
Hoffman. Mike
Nancy
Hoffman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too good. There you go.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. I enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
so it's good to see you. I will talk to you before lunch get close to tax
Yeah,
time,
that's
and we have to figure out what to do with Bud,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so, all right. Let me know.
Okay.
We'll follow up tomorrow. Via email. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Oh.